Hello, my name is Felix Mens and I'm here to submit my assignment on week 6.2. That's the community analysis presentation. Okay, so let me take you to here's my power slide. So the title is my community analysis, and we are going to talk about final project presentation, which is going to be based on these two communities. That's the transaction data and the soccer data analysis. That are my two communities. So I used SQL, and the goal is to answer key questions using the data. So now I'm having two data sets, two communities. Which one is the transaction data? That one, it contains the financial data, the field is cardholders, amount, merchants, and card types. Also, the stakeholders are the banks and analysts, and the purpose is to understand spending patterns. So let's go to my SQL, and as you can see, this is the transaction data. So when it comes to transaction data, we have some like the columns like the card holders, transaction data, and other stuff. So here are the questions. So let's go back um, to the slide. So now for this slide, the first question was the total spending per card holder. So for that one, we use sum, group by, and card holders. And also the second question was the average category. For that one, we use average, group by, merchant category. So let's go to the the query to see. So now before that, let me change this one to transaction ID, else the query won't run. Okay, so transaction data, that's the right one. All right, so the first question we are going to breaking down by what, why, how, and also we give the explanation. So the first question was the total transaction per amount. So why, what, so what? Because we use it to find the total amount spent by each card holder, and why? To identify high value customers and understand spending behavior, and how we use the sum as we said it in the um, in the PowerPoint. So we use the sum function to group by the card holders to aggregate all their separate spending. So this query groups all transaction records by cardholders ID, then sum up all the transaction amounts for each cardholder using the sum. This produces one row per cardholder showing per total spending. So now let's run it and see. And this is the outcome. So this query explains all the transaction record by cardholders. Okay. So now let's move on to the next question. Uh, So the next question is, what is the total average? What is the total average transaction per this one? So what is, we use it to find the average transaction amount for each merchant category, and why? To understand which category generates the higher value transaction, and how? I use the average function to group the merchant category to calculate the average transaction amount for categories. So here is it. Let's run it up. So what this query does is this query groups transactions based on merchant category, then calculate the average transactions amount within each group by using average. This helps compare spending patterns across different categories. So now let's go to the third question. So let's go back to the slide to analyze the third and fourth question before we come back. So So the third question was transaction per card ID, and the one we used count, group by, card type, and also the fourth question was merchant greater than 20 transactions. For that one, we use count plus group by plus halving. So now let's demonstrate how we did it on the SQL. Okay. So now for the question three, what depends how many transactions were made for each card, and why? To analyze which card types are used more frequently, and how. I used the count function in the group by card as we said it in the slide. So now let's run 3. Okay, so for the question 3, this query groups all the transactions by card, then calculate the numbers of transaction record in each group. This shows the total usage frequently for each card. Now let's go to the question 4. Now for the question 4, Now for the question 4 is which a merchant have more than 20 transactions. So what identifies merchant that have a higher number of transactions and why? To find the popular or higher performing merchants and how. We used the count and the group by merchant name to count transactions to count transactions per merchant. So now let's run this one too. So now here is the outcome. So what this query does is it group transactions by merchant names and count them. Then having the cross filters out merchants with fewer than 20 transactions. This leaves only merchants with high activities levels. We are done with our first community. Now let's move on to the second community, which is the soccer base. So now when we come to the soccer base data, we have some like um let's go to the PowerPoint while once it's open. Now for the second list we have player performing data. The fields we have players, goals, teams, position, the stakeholders, we have coaches and analysis, and the purpose is to evaluate performance. Okay, so for the question 1 and 2, the for the one goals per player. So for that one, too, what we did is we used the sum plus the group by player name. And the question 2 was the team that are greater than the 10 goals. I want to use sum plus the group by plus having. So now let's demonstrate it on the SQL. So now this is the second. So now when you can see it from here, we have the matches, the player data, and we have also have the team data over here also. Okay, so now let me try to view. Let's get back to the question. So now for that one, what to calculate the the total number of goals scored by each player, and also how and also why to evaluate individual performance, and also how we use the sum functions and also the group by to add up all the goals scored by each player. Okay, so now let's run this query. Oh, okay. Now to run this query, let's change it. Sorry. Now to run this, let's change this to the soccer data or the query won't work. So now as we have it here, um, now let's run this query. Sorry. Yes, and there we are. So this query groups the data by player name. Then it sums all the goals scored by each player. Then give the total count for each player. Now to the question 2, which team have a score more than 10 goals? So which teams have a score more than 10 goals? So what? So find the team that have scored more than 10 goals. Why? To identify the stronger or the higher performing team. And how? We use the sum plus the group by team. Okay, so um, what this query does is this query groups players by team ID and sums their goal. Then the having clause filters only teams whose player goals exceeds 10. Okay, now let's go back to the slide for the next one. So the question 3 and 4, we have the top goals. For that one to use order by set plus top one. And for the question 4, player per position, that one use count by group by positions. Now let's go back to the query and let's go back to the question 3. So for the question 3, player with the most goals. So for the player with the most goals, what? To identify the player with the highest number of goals. Why? To determine the top performing goals, and why we use the order by and we use the order by goals in descending order, then selected the top results. Okay, so now let's run this one too. Now what this query does is the query Oh, okay. Now let me run it again. Okay. So for the question three, the query sorts player from highest to lowest based on goals scored. Then it selects the first record using top one. This returns the player with the most goals. Okay, now let's go to the question four. So for the question four, says how many players play in each position. So what determines how many players are in each positions and why? To understand team positions and player distribution and how I use the count functions and group by the positions to count how many players are in the position. Okay, so now let's run this query. So this query groups player by their positions. Then it counts how many players belongs to each group. This shows how many players are distributed across the position. Okay, so thank you very much. This is my presentation for um my two two communities. That's the soccer data and the transaction team aside alongside my um, my presentation. So I'll be submitting it. Thank you very much.